There we go. That's one thing that I never want to forget to do, because every class period that we have, it will be recorded. I'm going to stop sharing the poll results. Apple juice, like I said previously, is a little bit more popular than I expected. At 4 out of 47 people selected it. At any rate. Okay, so first day of classes. Always an exciting day. Always it can tend to be kind of a boring day because it's, oh, wow, we're going to see this variety of a syllabus. It's the exact same variety that I saw in my other class. I hope that I share some interesting things with you about how we're going to structure our class a little bit differently. And in part because, well, this might be your only online course that you're taking this semester. I just want to make sure that everyone is muted. Not because I don't want any sort of like commentary, but I just don't want anyone to have accidentally, signed into Zoom and stepped out for a moment. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is show you the Canvas page. This Canvas page is where I'll house everything. And to me, the biggest drawback of this is that as the semester progresses, you have to scroll down. I'm sure there are other drawbacks, but I apologize. I have a blind spot for those. If there is something that you see that's like structurally confusing, please let me know, because I'd like to improve it. I want this to be a page that's like intuitive for you to look at, and that you look at and you're like, I know exactly what information I need. So I've got it laid out where basically it's a simple table with 4 columns. Week of the semester, we have a total of 16 weeks this semester. So come this Friday, you might be like, 15 left, almost there. In addition to that, we'll be meeting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The final exam will be at 8 a.m. on December 9th. So from 8 a.m. till 10:30. Our final exam will be a departmentally written final exam. So it is a standardized exam, but it is not an ACS standardized exam. I know that the ACS exams, if you've ever taken them for Gen Chem 1 or maybe organic, they always are a little bit daunting because those exams are written intentionally or they're written in a way that, there aren't going to be 5 people who get a 100 on it. A large percentage of the class is not they're going to get a low score on it. But that's just to kind of normalize the scores. So our final exam in our 16th week, Monday, December 9th, 8 a.m. till 10:30. Now, in the event that you're ever curious about where your final exam, if you're ever curious, like, is that right? Because I will be honest, the first semester that I taught here at Texas State, for the first 2 months of my semester, I told my students the wrong exam time. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I made a huge mistake. If you ever want to see the final exam schedule, you can go to this URL right here, which I'm copying and pasting into our chat. Go to fall 2024. And then this is set up. You just look at the days of the week that your class meets. Our class meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So here's all your Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Our class meets from 9 to 9:50. So here's Monday, 9 to 9:50. Our exam date is Monday, December 9th from 8 till 10:30 a.m. So that's where I'm pulling that information from. And this is one way that I'm just kind of confirming that I do have the right information on our Canvas page. Okay, so next up is, over the course of the semester, we're going to have a total of 4 in-class exams. So Monday, September 23rd, Monday, October 14th, Monday, November 4th, and then last but not least, Wednesday, December 4th. I always prefer to have exams on Mondays so that everyone has the opportunity to kind of review over the course of the weekend. What that means is that on Fridays, so if we look right here, for instance, I gotta rearrange that. Oh, that's not what I want to do. Oh, wait, that's what I want. Yeah, there we go. If we look right here, September 20th, for instance, that will be the end of, block one, or not chapter one, but end of new material. And typically on those Fridays before exams, I basically like to split it as 50% new stuff and then 50% review slash exam description. I'll say exam Q and A plus description. So any questions that you want to ask me at that time about the exam, about the ensuing exam, you're more than welcome to. But like I said, I always like to have exams on Mondays, but there are some times, for instance, this one on December 4th, I don't like, that's coming off of a break, coming off of a holiday, and so I just kind of wanted to delay it a little bit. So this right here is our schedule for the semester. I will update that by adding new content as we progress through. I feel comfortable and confident saying that you'll basically always have the PowerPoint that we're going to be going over before you come to class or before your class. And I will post it as a PowerPoint file, a PPTX file, as well as a PDF. So anyone who likes to use a tablet or anything like that, you can use that Acrobat file. So that's basically the structure. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 till 10 a.m. There are some days that I will provide a pre-recorded lecture, and so that will be posted beforehand. That's not going to be very often, but that will happen from time to time. Now, with that said, I'm also going to record every single meeting. So I will record those, post those on my YouTube channel, and share that with y'all. Okay, so with that to say, I'll pull up the syllabus, which I believe is as a PDF. Yes, it is. We'll go through that real quick, and then we'll jump into basically the PowerPoint and the lecture for today. So course description. If you know someone who has taken this class, or you have taken this class before, and you pull up an old syllabus, the course description that's listed here is different from the course description that was posted, or that historically, it's different from the old course description. Sorry to interrupt, but I got a private message. Are there exam review documents? Yes. I'll post old exams, make those available for you. And because every semester varies a little bit in terms of where we get in the content, I'll try to provide up-to-date review docs. So to answer that question, yes, there are going to be review documents. Now, this course description. This is different from what was used in the summer. This was different from what was used in the spring, and the historical description of this course. This course provides a challenging introduction to biochemistry, covering the structure and function of nucleic acids, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. This last element, this last sentence, is maybe the most important part of the difference. Major metabolic pathways of carbohydrates and lipids are also examined. I bring that up because this is to address what I think and what lots of folks agree is an issue. So many of y'all are intending to take the MCAT or I think it's the PCAT, which is the pharmacy, and then the DAT for dental school. I think those are the biggest standardized exams that people who come to this class take. If you look at the webpage for the American Association of Medical Colleges, the AAMC, and or you get any sort of MCAT review documents, you'll look at the prerequisites. And those prerequisites include 1 semester of biochemistry. And many people take this class and they think, fantastic, I've taken this class, I've taken my 1 semester of biochemistry, I'm ready for the MCAT. Well, then they get to the MCAT and lots of the questions of, oh, PCAT, okay, thank you for the information. The PCAT is no longer a thing. It was stopped in January. This is embarrassing. I hate to be wrong, but in my defense, I'm not a standardized test writer nor preparing for pharmacy school. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a pass on that. Okay. It was unexpected. I read that wrong. I thought, yeah, anyway. So here's the deal with the MCAT. You go and you take the exam or you prepare for that exam. There's lots of questions that if you've taken a 1 semester biochemistry class, you'll look at them and you'll be like, where was I supposed to learn this? And that's because lots of those questions pertain to metabolic pathways. And that really is not something that's addressed until a 2nd semester biochemistry class. And that 2nd semester biochemistry class here at Texas State is Chem 4385, where you learn about metabolic pathways. And there are lots of people who have gone on to be physicians from Texas State who did not take 4385 because what they did was they studied really hard on the MCAT materials they had, and they did great on it. Now, this is a point that I'm trying to stress for people who are taking the MCAT. If you're not taking the MCAT, or if you have no intention of taking the MCAT, is this still relevant to you? Is this still important for you? Yes, it is. I think, and I wholeheartely believe that one of the challenges in any sort of chemistry class is that it's almost like you're bombarded with information without a lot of context. So it seems very abstract, like the entire class will feel very abstract, and it's like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm learning the rules and I'm applying them and I'm piecing this together. But in biochemistry, the first part of the prefix, bio, a living organism, you're learning about the chemistry of life. Well, in biochemistry, one of the important things that you understand and learn is about sugars or carbohydrates. And so to make this a little bit easier to understand, we're going to be talking about sugars in the context of metabolic pathways. So it's not just, hey, this is a sugar known as fucose. This is another sugar known as psychose. They're different because this many carbons, and this is the positioning of a hydroxyl group. Instead, we'll talk about the kind of the nutritional benefit and the physiological or the biological relevance of those sugars and say, well, this is not metabolized by most organisms because in glycolysis, in this metabolic pathway, here's how sugars are processed. So this change is to address basically changes this change is to, I believe, positively impact students who are taking the MCAT and students who aren't. So this is not just, oh, we're going to tailor this for one particular group. This is an improvement that I believe will benefit everyone. So you'll get this context of how sugars are metabolized, how lipids are metabolized, how there might be a benefit for somebody to eat a high-fat diet because you can get a lot of energy from fats and lipids. Okay, now the last thing that I wanted to mention about the course description is maybe the most important thing, and this is kind of an advising issue. Whatever your major is, this course is not intended for biochemistry majors. If you are a biochemistry major, you need to talk to a academic advisor because the course that you probably need to be in is Chem 3375. And I'm just saying probably because I don't know everyone's situation and what classes you came in with or anything like that. If you transferred. But this particular class is not intended for biochemistry majors. So if you're a biochemistry major, get in contact with an academic advisor and just confirm like it's okay for you to be in whatever class that you're in. Okay, so another thing that has been a little bit of a change from previous semesters is that this class no longer has a prerequisite of Organic 2. Instead, it's a co-requisite. So what that means is that you can simultaneously be enrolled in Chem 2342 or Organic Chemistry 2 and this class. And I highlight that because of the fact that your organic chemistry is like when you're a freshman, you take general chemistry, and it is truly general. It's a broad scope of everything. You're learning information that's applicable to every kind of subcategorization of chemistry. Then in your second year, you take organic chemistry, where you do a deep dive on mostly hydrocarbons, but you're talking about stuff in an organic environment. Now, biochemistry, for the most part, in this class, you need to know functional groups. But in terms of, do you need to know about the Grignard reagent to be a successful biochemist? You really don't. That's not to say it's not important that you've studied it and you process that information, because there's a benefit there. But the information that you learned in organic chemistry too, in terms of mechanisms and catalysis, you should not expect a random question on an exam about a Huckel structure. And those are my two organic chemistry terms that I really remember well: Huckel structure and the Grignard reagent. So there we go. Okay, now next up, it's pretty much boilerplate information that you see on any syllabus. We'll have quizzes, we'll have top hat. We've got a total of 4 exams, and we've got a final exam. That all adds up to 60. Yeah, that all adds up to 100%. And A is an 89.5. I use the 0.5 system to round up and everything like that. Exams, they are scheduled to take the entire 50 minutes. And since we'll be doing them remotely, and we'll be using Proctorio. So Proctorio, I believe that there's a specific browser. I believe you have to have Chrome in order to use it. So we'll do a test run of that. I'll open up a quiz, a quiz worth 0 points, so that you can make sure that you're in good shape with respect to Proctorio. And if there's anything alarming that happens from your testing environment or anything like that, I'll email you and say, hey, it looks like, you were flagged by Proctorio because you have a cat that stood on your shoulders. I have no problem with your cat standing on your shoulders. I personally don't like cats, but they're not my shoulders. So I'm fine with that. Your exams are going to be administered on Canvas using Proctorio. The exam time will be 50 minutes exactly, just like our class, but you'll have a window in which to take it. That window will open at 8:30 and will close at 10:30. And that's just to give you a little bit of a buffer. Some folks might say, well, I'm going to log in at exactly 9 a.m. Okay. Then your exam is done at exactly 9:50. Some folks might say, well, I overslept or something. So then you can start taking your exam at like 9:30, but then it's done at 10:20. The important part about this is that that's a 2-hour window in which your exam will be administered. Okay. Drop policy. There's the drop deadline that will probably be in mid-October or so. Then attendance, this item right here, it is your responsibility to account for anything you missed from a classmate. That's true, but also everything's going to be recorded so you can watch the lecture that you missed. You're expected to attend, but in terms of like missing a class, you'll just miss out on that activity of the day. If there are top hat questions, you missed out on those top hat questions. There's not going to be like top hat is worth 10% of your grade, and there's going to be like 2 days that I drop for everyone. So I just say that because top hat, I think that to get 7 out of those 10 points or 7 out of that 10%, it should be pretty easy to do that in terms of getting questions right and getting questions wrong. On the top hat, is it based on being correct or is it participation? That's a great question. And it's going to be 2 points for participation, 1 point for correct. So it's a combination. I just feel like it's kind of intended. Top hat is just like a engagement. So yeah, I know that some people do it 50-50, 1 point for correct, 1 point for participation, but I'm going to do 2 points for participation, 1 point for correct. And we'll do a handful of top hat questions, and sometimes top hat questions will be administered and basically told you have 24 hours to finish this. So that will be kind of a separate thing. Canvas, that's how I'll communicate with you. I use the announcements tab on Canvas. I rarely use the email client in Canvas. So I just send out whole group announcements. And so make sure that, and I mean, everyone in here, I believe, received an email as an announcement as an email from either yesterday and or today. So that to me is an indication that they do work. I try not to abuse Canvas announcements because I feel like if you use 60 of them, it gets or sorry, if you send like 4 of them a day, it gets kind of taxing, and then you just decide, well, I'm not going to read these. And so I don't want to do that. But I would, I would say at least every other day, you should probably expect some sort of announcement from me, whether that is, hey, we got class or something of that nature. So with that in mind, I've got, sorry, just 1 second. Okay, so here we go. Stop sharing, share again. Okay, so here we go. So CHEM 4375, I'm going to go over some more of the details in this, and I'll work out some examples. This isn't really groundbreaking. We've already kind of covered that. And intended for non-biochemistry majors, sugars, fats, amino acids. Those are the big molecules that we're going to talk about because all of those build into something. We'll discuss a couple of metabolic pathways. Your exams are worth a grand total of 80% of your grade. That's your 4 in-class exams and then your 1 final exam. And then quizzes and top hat will be a separate thing. Quizzes will be administered during our class period, also on Canvas. but that will just be like, hey, 15 minutes at the end of class. You have a quiz that's up, you have 15 minutes to take it. There will be like a 20-minute window in which you can take it. Now, with that in mind, if you have accommodations for additional time, I need you to contact me as soon as possible so that I can set things up so that you have the additional time. With that also said, in the event that a exam rolls around, look at the time allocation that you have. And email me if the allotted time is 50 minutes. But if you are set up to receive 2x time, then you should have 100 minutes. If you see that it says 50 minutes instead of 100, email me. I apologize in advance. And I will make that change as soon as possible. So there we go. Quizzes, top hat exams. Then actually there was something else. No. Okay. The last thing, kind of functional and structural, that I wanted to talk about with this class. Oh, I see some. How many quizzes total? We're gonna probably have, like, I would say, one every other week or so. So that puts us at like 7 or 8. And I typically drop like 1 or 2. So the question that I got was how many quizzes? 7 or 8. Okay, then, okay, here is my tablet. Just a second. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to talk about was these exams. Okay, so just a second. I do have office hours. I'm gonna do them on Mondays and Fridays. Monday I'll do an early one, and then on Fridays I'll do one probably at like 11 or so. I'm gonna send out a survey to see what works for the most people as possible. So that's why they're not on the syllabus. Okay, now grades for exams. These exams are cumulative. And what that means is that, and I hope this doesn't get confusing. I'm going to basically say that over the course of the semester, we'll have 4 modules. We'll call it M1, M2, M3, M4. Now, what that means is that exam 1 is basically the only one that's not really cumulative, because that will only have module 1 content, because that's all that you've covered when you take exam number 1. Module or exam number 2, however, that is going to be a mix of module 1 and module 2. And it's going to be basically, I'll call it around 30% module 1 and roughly 70% module 2. And that's going to be reflected in the point total as well as the number of questions. So exams are typically 25 to 35 questions. So if it's 35 questions, 70% of 35 would be something like 24 or so. So that means roughly 11 questions. About 11 here, and then about 24 cover this material. Exam number 3, that's going to be modules 2 and module 3. Then last but not least, exam number 4 is going to be module 3 plus module 4. Then, you guessed it, your final exam is module 1, module 2, module 3, module 4. It's cumulative, so it covers everything. And your final exam is going to be, 25% module 1, 25% module 2. So that's going to cover everything there. It's going to be an even distribution of all that material. So that's what that's going to shape up as. Now, I think a very fair question is, why on earth are you doing this? And the reason is for grading and for the purposes of basically improving as the semester goes on. So before I proceed, does anyone have any questions about, what each exam will cover? Okay, great. So I'm going to, chat question. So M2 won't be on test 4. That's correct. Likewise, module 1 won't be on test 4. Okay.
I had a quick question. On
Sure.
the syllabus, it said that like one of your 5 exams lowest is dropped. So is that including the final exam, or is it just 1 through 4 your lowest grade is dropped?
Well, I need to take a look at that and rephrase that.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Are there true and false questions? Are the true and false questions straightforward? I usually struggle on those. I would say yes, my intention is to make as every type of question straightforward. So I'll say yes to that. Okay, now what this is, I'm going to erase all the ink and I'm going to give you kind of a hypothetical. So let's look at some grades. This is someone who takes exam 1, exam 2, exam 3, exam 4, and then the final. So I'm going to make a little matrix here. I'm going to say you'll come to class and you'll take exam 1. And let's say that on that exam, I'm just going to write the scores for this one column for the days that you take that exam. And this is what's going to show up on that exam for Canvas or on Canvas. So let's say that exam 1, you get a 75. Then exam 2, you get an 80. Exam 3, that's some tougher material, you get a 65. And then exam 4, you get a 60. Then on the final exam, you come into the final and you say, all right, well, I really need to know this material. And you will have access to all of your old exams because they're up on Canvas. You'll see the correct answers, you'll see the incorrect answers. And anytime you want to talk about them or ask questions about anything, I'm glad to meet with you. I'm glad to give you an explanation. So let's say on the final exam, you get an 85. Okay. Now here's how that shapes up. And we'll watch this kind of as the semester progresses. I'm going to make this second column and then a third column. So in my second column, change colors of the ink. In my second column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write in 80 because exam 2 covers both exam or module 1 and module 2 material. So that will be added for this exam. Then that will be added to this second column. Then for exam 2, well, exam number 3, if you remember, is module 2 plus module 3 stuff, where exam 1, or sorry, 1 plus M2, M3 plus M4. Okay, so this 80 gets written in here and kind of pooled with this. The 65 gets written into this column because of the fact that when you were tested on exam 2 material or module 2 material, your first shot at it, you got an 85. The next time you got a 65. Does that make sense? You're basically getting multiple attempts at this material. So then the 65 goes there, the 60 goes here. Okay. Now, when you take the final exam, I'm going to have this third column, which shows, or which is where I will copy your final exam score. Again, 85, 85, 85, 85. And the reason for that is, let me ask you this question. Did the final exam cover module number 1? It did. Okay. So effectively, whenever I look back at your final exam and I say, oh, well, I see you got an 85 on that. How well do you know the module 1 material? Effectively, I have an 85 by the time the class is done. Did you know it at an 85% to start the semester? No, you didn't. Your first chance at it, you got a 75. Second chance at it, you improved a little bit. So what's going to show up for me in the grade book is I will have basically an exam 1 kind of grouping. And in that grouping, you'll have 75, 80, and 85. For this grouping, I can set a rule, or I'm going to set a rule. And in that rule, I'm going to drop the lowest 2 scores. So the 75 and the 80 are both dropped. So then whenever I look at your grade and I try to calculate your semester average, I'm going to look at that 85. Then for exam 2, well, the 80 and the 65 get dropped. The 85 persists. So effectively what this means is that over the course of the semester, I want to see that you're improving. And you, like when you don't do as well on an exam, you look back at that material and you study it better. And you say, okay, well, here's the mistake that I made. Why did I make that mistake? Okay, well, here I figured out why I made that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake again. And on the final exam, I'll reflect that, where I got an 85 on it. So this 85 that you got on the final exam, that really changes your grade for the positive. So there are one way that you could look at this, and I would say it's a cynical way to look at it, is you could say, oh, okay, so I could skip exams 1 through 4. I could never come to class. And then as long as I do well in the final, I'll do well in the class. Does everyone follow that? Does anyone think that's a really good idea? Does anyone think that that is missing the point of education altogether? Yes. Priscilla, do you have a question? You're muted if you... Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So the point is that when you take your first exam in my class, I don't want you to think about this as, oh my gosh, I got a 60. This is literally the end of the world. Because a couple of days later, when you take exam 2, or weeks later, when you take exam 2, you're being tested over this exam 1 material again. So that's an opportunity to look back at that exam and say, okay, I missed questions 1, 7, 14, 22, and 38, or 28. Those are the questions that I missed. Why did I miss those? Oh, those are all titration questions. Okay, and you can kind of do like an internal analysis and say, it looks like I still have trouble with titrations. So I need to make sure that I know how to do those. So that's where I need to brush up. That's where I need to, correct the mistakes. Does that make sense? So, in addition to all of that, the person who decides that they are not going to come to class at all, they're missing out on the quizzes and the top hat questions. So, the very best grade that they could get is an 80. So, if they're thinking, aha, I've cracked the code, that's a situation where I just think they're making a tremendous mistake, because that's not the point at all. The point is to learn this material, to spend time with this material. And lecture is a good time to spend time with that material. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about grading or exams for that matter? As someone who is, oh, sorry, there's one question. As someone who is really bad test taker, I really appreciate the multiple attempts with each exam to improve our grades. Fantastic. That's great. So once an exam is over and the grade is in, then that's when Canvas will show us what we got wrong. Yes, that is correct. So I had this question of when will we get feedback? I always set it to release the correct answers like 24 hours after an exam. And so you'll take the exam, the window will close at 10:30, and then on Tuesday at 10:30 a.m., all of the right answers will be visible. I encourage you to go look at those, and, in the event that there's something that I overlooked, email me and say, hey, I thought that this question would be B and it's marked C. Well, I'll go back and look at that. And in the event that I made a mistake, I can very easily award those points. In the event that I didn't make a mistake, then I'll give you an explanation. Oh, well, it's actually B because of this reason. C is a tempting answer, but the reason C is wrong is because of this. Okay, so we got a couple more minutes. So what we will do is go into functional groups. So when it comes to biochemistry, and specifically coming off of organic chemistry, you learned a little bit about functional groups. You learned quite a bit about functional groups. And arguably, that's where a lot of the interesting stuff about organic chemistry comes from, because all of these different groups have different reactivities and they can do different things. Now, as a biochemist, this list of groups right here, an organic chemist would look at this list of functional groups and say, oh, but that's neglecting all of these other functional groups. You're right. These are the functional groups that are most relevant to biochemists. Now, I would narrow it down a little bit, and I would bring it down to, well, a smaller list. So what I would do is, and what I'm going to do, is I'm going to highlight the ones that are kind of most important for this class. These first three, aldehydes and ketones, carboxylic acids. Now, in time, we'll go through and we'll see almost all of these, but these first six of the first seven here, amines, alcohols, thiols, aldehydes, ketones, and carboxylic acids, these are groups that are important for you to know about for understanding sugars, understanding amino acids, and formation of proteins. Now, in the event that you get kind of flustered or forget any information about these, please let me know. But for the importance, or for a biochemist, one of the things that you need to know about these different groups, specifically the amines. What we have here is an R group going to nitrogen, and that nitrogen is covalently bound to a couple of different hydrogens. So this would be a amine that is bound to 1, 2, 3 hydrogens. Now, the important thing to know about a nitrogen bound to 3 different hydrogens is this goes back to Gen Chem 1. You have what's called a formal charge. The formal charge of a nitrogen that has a total of 4 bonds to it. I'll take you back to Gen Chem 1 for formal charge as well as polyatomic ions. Does anyone remember the polyatomic ion with a nitrogen in it? Spoiler alert, it's your one polyatomic cation that you talk about. I'll give you another hint. Oh, here we got a chat. Close. We're going to go with ammonium. Because remember, there's ammonium and ammonia. Ammonium is NH4 plus. That nitrogen has a positive charge on it because nitrogen, from the Lewis structure of nitrogen really likes to have 1, 2, 3 bonds and a lone pair of electrons. Just so everybody knows, I'm using the exact same link for my biochemistry class and my class that starts at 10 a.m. I have back-to-back classes, so in the event that you at a later date join this Zoom link at like 10:15 and you're like, oh my gosh, he's not talking about biochemistry. You're right, I'm not. So don't get confused by that. So anyway, so this is what nitrogen likes to have. It likes to have 3 bonds and a lone pair of electrons. That's where nitrogen has no formal charge to it. However, when nitrogen has 4 bonds to it, if 3 of them are hydrogen and 1 is an R group, or if all 4 of them are hydrogens, it's going to have a positive charge. So that's an important thing to know about amines. And in biochemistry, we will talk a lot about charges. Does this have a positive charge? Does it have a negative charge? Does it have no charge whatsoever? Now, this is important because this group right here will bounce back and forth between or reach an equilibrium. This ammonia reaches an equilibrium with ammonium. Now, this is the last question that I'm going to ask. First of all, what's the charge of this molecule right here? This is not a trick question. Anyone can add it to the chat. And I'm going to double down on this is not a trick question. And positive 1, 100%. Was that a trick question? No. That's the sort of questions that I like to ask. This is as blunt as it can possibly be. Okay. Now, this molecule right here that I'm going to circle, what is the charge on that? 0. Perfect. That is one of the most important things that you will need to learn for this class and understanding charges of different groups. There are some times whenever it has a +1 charge, and whenever it gets deprotonated, it goes to, if a group has a +1 charge and loses a single proton, it will go from +1 to 0, as opposed to +1 to -1. Think about a number line. If you are writing all of the numbers from -5 to +5, well, that would include -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 0 is a number. So that's an important thing to remember. A molecule with a charge of 0 is different from a molecule with a charge of -1. Now, that's where I'm going to end today's class for your Chem 4375 biochemistry class. I'm going to go ahead and stop my recording. I've got a class right after this, and so I have to stop.